Weirdos, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan, and today I have another amazing book review for you. I finished Archenemies by Marissa Meyer. It is the second installment of the Renegades trilogy, and let me tell you, it was just as good as the first. If you have not read Renegades or Archenemies, I recommend that you read them if you are into YA. These kinds of books are amazing. They have superheroes, they have villains, and they just have all of the good stuff that you just love to read about. I will link my review of Renegades down below, so you guys can go check that out if you have not seen it already. As for Archenemies, it is the next installment, so this is the continuation. And this one, Nova's double life as Nightmare and Insomnia is starting to become a lot more complicated. Her lies are becoming riskier, and they are just piling on top of each other, and she's having a hard time keeping up with all of her duties as a renegade and with all of her duties as an anarchist. And things are just getting really complicated, and things are also getting super spicy for our lovely couple between Nova and Adrian. So I recommend that you read this book, and do not start this book unless you already have Supernova on the way, because once again you are left with a giant cliffhanger at the end. I will warn you in advance about that. And you want to start Supernova right away, so definitely make sure you have that before you start this one, or at least get it before you finish, so that way you can start the next one right away. I think that is all I really have to say without giving away any spoilers. This book is definitely 5 stars out of 5, so I highly recommend that you get this book. I think that's it for my non-spoiler people, so I'm going to say goodbye to you non-spoilers so that I can start talking about details of the book. So, bye non-spoiler people! Okay, so one of the main things that I would love to talk about is that right away we jump right into an action scene. It has been a few months since the end of the other book. They said it's a few months later at the start of this book. And they are right in the middle of a battle with a crazy villain called Hawthorne. She has these spiky tentacles, and they don't really know much about her. And it turns out that her tentacles can do a lot more than they think than is put in their system. So they have no idea that she's got all these awesome, crazy abilities that she can use these tentacles for. And they obviously lose this first battle with Hawthorne, and she gets away. So I am like so excited to finally see a villain that they can't stand up against and take down so easy. I kind of think it's just annoying when they just always win right away. It's like, well, it really wasn't much of a fight. So it's really nice to finally see that there's a little bit of struggle with somebody, not just somebody in her group. They did catch some members of her group, and she did obviously get away, so that was pretty cool. Another thing, Adrian not thinking that Nightmare was dead after the whole ending scene at the funhouse. He did not think she was dead, and he's like, I'm skeptical. We didn't find any body parts. Not even a drop of blood. That's just insane. Even if a person blew up, and I knew that that was going to add another layer of conflict to the ever-growing craziness of this story. So I'm really glad that that was there. And one thing that Adrian and Nova did point out, both when they were talking to each other, was that there is a very thin line between the renegades and the anarchists. They had similar methods. The anarchists, when they took over for the Age of Anarchy, they just kind of did whatever they want. They killed people. They didn't have any rules. And the renegades, when they were first starting out, they didn't have any rules. So their methods were pretty similar. They did the same things. And it's a very thin line between good and evil. And speaking of that thin line, Agent N that they created has crossed that line for me. I hated Agent N. I cannot believe they created this. They have crossed the line from renegade superheroes to renegade anarchists in my book. Like, there is no difference between, the renegades and the anarchists at this point. If you are just equipping all of your patrol units with Agent N to neutralize all of the superheroes just because they broke the law, or because they don't agree with the renegades, or because they don't want to be a renegade, that is crossing the line. That is like our police officers in real life running around with the chemicals that they use to kill people on death row. You're just out there willy-nillying this stuff. There's no court hearings, there's no trial, there's no appeal, there's no process that they have to go through to actually neutralize somebody's powers, and there's not a limit on it. Somebody could be neutralized for stealing a sandwich from the store and they were just trying to feed their family, you know. There has to be a limit on it, and there has to be rules and regulations. You can't just equip it with all of your officers or your renegades in this case. So I do not agree with that. That just really bugged me about it. I really hope that Agent N gets nixed off after what happens at the end of this book, which I will get to, because oh my gosh, that was amazing. The thing that I wanted to talk about that broke my heart was Winston losing his powers. That whole scene broke my soul. I was like waiting for Nova to step in. I'm like, oh my god, Nova, save him, save him, save him. And I knew she wasn't. I was really hoping that she was going to do something. I knew she probably wouldn't, but I was like really hoping that she would. It's like, oh my god, how is she going to save him? How is she going to save him? And then he took control of a couple of kids over there, and you know, it just, the shit hit the fan, and then he got stabbed with the Agent N, and then his, I don't want to call it makeup, but it was his makeup that came off, you know. It was like in him, because that was his superpower. He was the puppeteer, and it just melted away, and you just watched it, and and as he realized what was happening, he was panicking and crying because they didn't tell him what was happening. They didn't tell him what they were doing, and I do not like that at all, that they didn't even tell him what was going to be happening or what they were doing. Like, that is ridiculous, just to spring that on somebody and to take their powers away and change that person forever. Like, that is something that should not be done without a trial, proper judge, jury, and then the executioner. You cannot decide to be the judge, jury, and executioner, because that shit gets you put in jail in society. Like, in the real world, if you decide that someone has hurt you and you decide to go to them and punish them for it, and you enact that punishment, you are being the judge, jury, and executioner, and you get in trouble for it, because you can't do that. They have to be found guilty in a court of law, and then other people, by other people, and then somebody else, yet another person, has to decide what the punishment is going to be for that crime. So I did not like that at all. It broke my heart, and I hated that. I hated seeing that, and I can't. It just hurt my soul. That I did want to make sure that I talked about was when Nova saw Max using Ace Anarchy's powers, and he was levitating himself in like 50 objects around the room, and he saw that she saw him, and he got hurt, and he was bleeding, and she just ran into his cage, or his quarantine. It is a cage, isn't it? It's just a fancy cage. And then Adrian saw that she was in there, and he ran in after her, and she came out, and she needed to see if her powers still worked after she found out who Max was, what his powers were, and all of that stuff. She needed to know if her powers worked. So she went to the infirmary, and she was talking to Dana, who was recovering from her own injuries, and she, you know, put her hand on Dana and just put her to sleep. And I'm like, okay, first of all, why did she not try to play that off like, you know, oh, like, I would have been like, you know, hey, Dana, are you feeling okay? You like, and I would have like touched her forehead, and I'd have been like, you look like you're about to pass out, and then just like, and then did it that way, and she just went like, touch, and put her to sleep. And then Dana, after she wakes up later on, she's like, yeah, it's just crazy how I passed out like that. And Nova's like, yeah, you know, typical, you know, shock and, you know, recovering from injuries. And Dana's like, yeah, typical. She doesn't believe her. And I'm like, why did you not play that off better? And so now Dana is suspicious of her, and, you know, later on Nova notices that she's being followed by a butterfly, and she thinks she is, but the butterfly gets away. And then later on, she's like, oh my gosh, I should be paying attention more to the butterflies, and, you know, because you never know if it's just a random butterfly or if it's actually Dana following her, trying to see what's going on. You know, who knows? So I'm like, she needs to be careful. am really proud of Dana for catching on right away. One thing that drives me nuts is that Nova asks a lot of questions, and she's like, "Oh, well, tell me about your security system. Tell me about the cameras and the security system, the patrol units, and all the stuff, you know, around the hallways." And they're like, "Oh, you know, we don't really have any people guarding the inside of the building. This is Renegade headquarters." Those cocky assholes are the reason that the whole ending of the book happens, because they're like, nobody's gonna break in here. It's a Renegade headquarters. Are you dumb? Like, you guys are just so cocky. You think that no one's gonna break into Renegade headquarters, and they do. They think that, and it just drives me crazy. I'm like, you guys are so stuck up and just, ugh, whatever. I can't even. Some cute parts with Nova and Adrian, and I absolutely love that Nova and Adrian shared their childhood dreams, and not like dreams of the future, but like dreams they actually fell asleep and had. Adrian drew Nova's dream from what she told him in his basement, and he created that oasis for her, and that was so lovely. And you know, he didn't know about the star in her dream. She said she never got to go around the statue. She always woke up before she could, and that star jumping out and going into her bracelet, I'm really curious about what that is and why that happened. And then later on it attaches itself to Ace's helmet, and it makes me wonder what the hell her dad's power was. Like, not just to create things. Like, I don't even remember what Nova's dad's power is at this point, but he's got some crazy stuff going on, and I'd like to know more about that. I need some answers with that. A cute little date at the gala that was so adorable, and I do wish that they had described Nova's dress a little bit more. I loved the night before the gala. Adrian and Nova shared that amazing kiss, and I was like, finally, it is about time. You guys are so cute together. You guys just need to be together. At the same time that Nova is breaking into Renegade headquarters and stealing from the vault, you know, Adrian and Ruby and Oscar are fighting Ace Anarchy. And when Nova is trying to escape Renegade headquarters, she gets caught by Frostbite and her team. Obviously, Nova ends up defeating them. She is currently dressed as Nightmare. She ends up defeating them and getting away, having neutralized all three of them. She neutralized Frostbite, Gargoyle, and Stingray. They are no longer prodigies, and thank God for that, because they did not deserve their powers. I am very happy about that. And but on her way out, Frostbite stabbed Max, and of course she is blaming Nightmare. She said that Nightmare stabbed her, and Nova can't exactly defend herself because by some miracle her cover did not get blown. So she has gotten away with this, and thank goodness. Adrian thinks that Nova stabbed Max, and it is just insanity, and I'm like, how is she gonna get out of this? On the other side, Ace Anarchy has been caught. Revealed to Oscar and Ruby that he is the Sentinel and that he did not kill Hawthorne. That was Frostbite, and they believed him. They understood. I think that pretty much concludes my book review for Archenemies. So I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye! That I had a lot of trouble with while reading Renegades was that there were so many people's names, their superhero names, their alter ego superhero names, and then their superpowers. It was really hard for me to keep up with everybody, but I have made cast list bookmarks for Renegades, Archenemies, and Supernova. So if you are interested in these are available for sale on my Etsy shop. I make them myself. They do not just come in white. I have a few red and a few blue, and I'm also doing them in watercolors. I make the watercolor ones. Those are available. And I also have other bookmarks that I have made myself on my Etsy shop. I also have some smaller bookmarks that are front and back, so if you don't like having such a long bookmark, I do have it condensed. This is a 2x9-ish, I believe, and then the other ones are 2x6, so they're about half the size of this. So if that is your preference, those are also available on my Etsy shop. Check it out. I will leave the link in the description down below.